from Israel or you're hatred from Pahlavi, judging from the views of your grandfather, because I don't know your wrong view.
That's really interesting. I don't know where you got the idea that Miriam is anti-Israel, or even for that matter pro-IRGC, but Miriam, if you'd like to be able to respond to that, that's entirely up to you.
I think you, as
Opposing regime change, opposing regime change right now is pro-IRGC.
supports
Hey,
Israel.
wait, hang on. Pause for 1 second, okay. Just for what it's worth, A, we've got a one mic policy. B, if a moderator is talking, that's not an indication to be able to open mic and just talk over them. It's not a good idea. We're not going to accept that. Sorry, Miriam, as you were saying?
I was just saying that as a Jewish man who supports Israel, I think it's fascinating from the outside and the current climate of trying to label people a certain way to, and I said it actually when you played my statement in the space. I think the question was cleverly worded, but I think you responded to it well, Ro. So I'm just going to leave your statement, if you want to repeat it again, out there for people to really understand the perception of what I said, how you took what I said, listening very carefully, how you said as a Jewish man who supports Israel, and what somebody like Sano is trying to paint what I said.
So I don't know how you came to the conclusion that Miriam is anti-Israel and pro-IRGC. Is it possible you've misheard something?
No, I'm just asking, I'm not saying she's anti-Israel. I'm just asking, why would she be against regime change after a historical opportunity we have? We don't have the luxury of choosing exactly how to carry out regime change. And if this fails, then there will be massive massacres. There will be tens of Havarot. If you are Iranian, you know what is Havarot. What is the mass murder of political prisoners in the East. There will be tenfold of that awaiting us if this regime change attempt fails. So why would anyone be against regime change now? Just because it is not exactly the way I direct it to be?
Well, I mean, maybe a way to put it would be, Mary, do you think that under the current circumstances, if there was a regime change, could it actually be any worse than what it currently is?
Hey, Miriam, in the midst of your answer to that question,
Ro, I would actually like to also hear what Anthony wants to kind of say too, so I can answer it all together, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, okay, that's
all right. Excellent. So Miriam, I just want to be clear, right? Do you think it's a fair stance for someone to feel if you're anti-regime change, that makes Miriam pro, IRGC? Do you think that's a fair statement?
If Miriam actually explicitly says she's against regime change, I'm sure that there's somebody out there that could take that and make 2 + 2 = 4 in that context. But I'd like anyone here, I charge anyone, to tell me where in any of my statement or anything else that I said, assert that I am anti-regime change. Please. And Rose heard the video, Ro played the video. Ro, did I say anything anywhere that I'm anti-regime change at all?
No, you certainly...
Or even imply it in the slightest?
No, there was no implication whatsoever. It was an assumption that was being made and an assertion that came as a result of that, much the same as the assertion that you're anti-Israel, which I've known you on here for I don't know how long, but I've never heard you be anti-Israel once.
So to be clear, Miriam, I haven't heard you say anything that indicates that you're anti-regime change. I was just asking the question as a concept. It's not based on something you said. Multiple people have asserted that you're anti-regime change. I haven't heard you state that.
I would like to say something. Is it okay? So from what I hear so far, this is more about ancient people, Kurd. They are divided now in Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and Iran, right? Most of them are in Turkey. What I hear from Marian is there's a lot of complexity. The history timeline is very important, and she just hopes that in this discussion of how the regime change will take place, that people do not totally ignore. There is this, 8 million Kurds in Iran, but she hoped for the bigger picture. What would the world want to do with people Kurds? There are distributed around 14 million in Turkey, 8 in Iran, and some in Iraq, and some a little in Syria. I think that's what I hear from her. And I rather hear things like that, which is based on truth, than having many Israeli people wasting time on daily basis, debating futilely with people like Aziz, or people who just come and waste the time of the Israeli people. We hope for IRGC to go away. And the question is, in this very sensitive, uncertain time, should we hear about the future of Kurd, right? But if this is presented as a truth, and if there is no misleading, everything is clear that she's not representing Kurd who is and thinking about anti-Israel, I don't hear that, and I also don't hear that about anti-regime change. She just hope that there is this truth in history. What would happen to these people when there's an anti-regime change, when there's a regime change? And also the other point, what she said is, who is going to lead the regime change? She believes, maybe it's not her or somebody else, it's the Kurd people who's going to lead the regime change. They are willing to sacrifice their life. Again, I could be wrong, but she's not anti-regime change. She just hope in this very historical moment in Iran, people don't forget there is an 8% Kurd death. That's my point of view.
Marion, did you want to follow up with that?
Sorry for interrupting. Sorry,
Let me
Maria.
clarify, Sarah. Sarah, hang on. Let me clarify.
No, there's a guy in the chat who's like making very, very nasty comments. Maybe somebody wants to.
It's okay. I see it, but I think it's also important to see that it exists there, Sarah John. Okay, because that is also telling. Again, we're talking about complexities of all of this. There are people out there who make the statement, nuke Iran, right? I mean, they even create an account about it. We can disavow it, we can get upset about it, but we can't ignore that it exists, in my humble opinion. To answer Dave, I think I understand where you're coming from with the whole reliance on the Kurd part and bringing that. I didn't say definitively that it's Kurds. I said in response to Ro, when he asked me about this, I said that the complexity of it does cause a concern for me looking at it from the outside based off of 120 years. So when you have a population of Iranians globally, 80 plus million inside, and you have so many different factions and people that subscribe to a different type of political affiliation or ideology, it begs the question, where's the utopia? Where's that utopian leader or group of leaders? If you really want my opinion, I think that the leaders of Iran are in those jails. I think that the dissidents and the political activists that have given their blood, sweat, and tears and have stayed in the country and have fought against the government, those people, to me, in my humble opinion, are the ones that are truly the ones that can navigate all of this, because even sociologically or psychologically, they've earned the respects of their compatriots inside of Iran enough because they see them that have stayed there. Whether we on the outside have different judgments and opinions about them, and we want to go down conspiracy rabbit holes or affix a label to them, regardless of what we think on the outside, the people inside of Iran, they recognize who's in prison right now. So that's where I'll land on that part, Dave. And that's what I was trying to explain, is there's a complexity there of all the different.
Let me chime in here with a quick question. I think the commentary in the chat, and you referenced it, Marion, begs a provocative question. And I'd like for you, if you could, to answer it directly. The question is this: do you think that Iran should have nuclear weapons? And if so, or not, why or why not?
That's a great question, TC. That was actually a question we were talking about yesterday, and I've been on different panels talking about this. On principle, I think every sovereign nation has a right to do that. The issue about Iran having nuclear capabilities started actually in the late 1960s and 1970. So during that time, there was Project Flower. You had the Shah of Iran back then, the late Shah, asking the United States for the ability to develop a nuclear program. The question right now is, do we trust this regime enough to have a nuclear program? My question to that is, what type of government would anyone trust to have a nuclear program? And the foundational principled question is, does every sovereign nation have the right to do it, right? Have the right to have it? And so if you look back at the history of Iran, it's not exclusive to 46 years, this question about nuclear programs, nuclear reactors. The Shah of Iran had a program to have 22 or 23 nuclear sites. Before Ford was Nixon, Nixon said, okay, let's work on an agreement. Let's talk to each other about this. So they had that. Then you had the Guadalupe conference that happened. In the middle of that, you had Ford come in. So the complexity and the accuracy of the chronological timeline of all this lends itself to the question of, when will the West or anyone in general be satisfied, and what regime will be satisfied for something like this to happen? So on principle alone, yes, I believe that Iran has the right to have the same things that Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Israel, America, every other country has. I would be a liar if I said that I didn't agree on that. So I'll leave it there.
If I could just follow up on that, real quick, and then I'll hand it right back off to you.
Yeah, sure. I think I know where you're going to go with it.
Yeah, I don't, and don't take this the wrong way, Miriam, but I asked you to answer the question directly because I wanted to evoke a response to the question that's guided the conversation, which is, what is the utility of a nuclear-armed Iran? We're not talking about nuclear energy, we're talking about a nuclear bomb. And so the question was, in your opinion, should this current regime have a nuclear bomb? And if so, why? And I think you gave a principled response, which I respect, and I can respect that response, because if everybody else is entitled to it, then why shouldn't Iran be entitled to it? That's fair. But considering the implications of this current regime armed with a nuclear weapon, I guess agnostic to any type of principled or just principled stance on the issue of fairness and equity for countries having access to weapons that other countries have, why would it be advantageous for this regime of Iran to have a nuclear bomb? If you want to answer that, you can. If not, no worries. But
I'll answer it. Yeah, I'll answer it, but I'm not going to be direct the way that you want, okay, TC? Because I think it requires a little bit of background. Yeah. So I'm gonna speak as an American citizen here. My statement before was as an American citizen, and also pride in my heritage and the fact that Iran does deserve this. And this has been a question since I said from the late 1960s and 1970. There's been a lot of talk about JCPOA, right? So when the U.S. backed out of JCPOA, although Iran was still in a nuclear agreement with the E3 nations, France, Germany, UK, there were some agreements there, it got out of hand. So Iran went from 3.67 to 60%. That's a big jump. Okay, I think we can all agree that that shouldn't have happened, and I think the regime was stupid for allowing that to happen. So I don't agree on that. I don't think they should have done that. Then you've got the IAEA. They say that, there's conflicting statements. In one breath, you've got, it's going to happen within the next 3 weeks, three months, etc. But then you've got the definitive statement from the IAEA saying that Iran is not building a bomb and is likely not to in the next 3 years, away, even if it wanted to. Okay, so even if it chose the path to develop a nuclear bomb, it hasn't indicated so, but what they have right now could if they wanted to, right? So that's a question, that's an issue. But right now, in terms of policy and the U.S. position on this and what we're doing here in the U.S. domestically, the question is, it's at least 3 years away. We've had so many conflicting reports from, you've got, you know, the Director General Grossi, he came out and said something, and then he had to walk that back. I think 2 days ago he was on the TV doing an interview, walking back what he said. There's so many layers to all of this. So given this current regime, the way that they have behaved, no, I think it's fair for any Western country to say, hey, hold on a second here. Like, what are you doing? Why do you need 60%? So I think that's a fair question to ask, and as from this position, from a policy position, looking at that, I would also say, why are you guys enriching this much? I agree with the sentiment that we should be concerned with what they're doing with that. So I'm not disavowing any Western perspective on our opinion of Iran's ability to have it with this regime and the statements that they've made. And I'm not talking about domestic. I'm talking about you know, when it comes to like their foreign relation policies.
In a nutshell, given the current regime, would you feel comfortable as a person who's living in Israel for them to be able to have developed nuclear capabilities further than what they have?
That's a good question, Ro. Given the asinine statements from our former president Ahmadinejad and, you know, some of the rhetoric around there that's really escalated the whole, you know, Iran versus Israel thing, no, I can see why Israel would not feel comfortable. I could see that. I respect the position of Israel saying, hey, we're not comfortable with Iran having this because, you know, ever since Ahmadinejad opened his stupid mouth, this is what he said.
You know, I want to get in here.
That was answering the question, but not the question that I was asking. Would you feel comfortable?
She's good at that, Ro.
Like this,
She's good
as
at
a
that.
person, hang on for a second. Would you, as an Israeli, feel comfortable with Iran or IRGC developing greater strengths of uranium?
If I was an Israeli, I would not feel comfortable. If I was an Israeli.
Okay. You understand that obviously Israel's need to be able to take matters into their own hands, and given the threat that the IRGC has made and the Ayatollah has made towards Israel, and it's not just this particular one, and it's not just the last week or the last couple of months, but this has been something that's happened over decades, as you're well aware. There's been constant threat to Israel coming from Iran, not just directly, through its proxies as well, through the funding of Hamas, through the funding of Hezbollah, through PIJ, through Houthis, which are also causing major problems within the water boundaries for shipping and so forth, which is causing problems for the rest of the world. I'm also aware that the funding the Houthis, where you have 2 million people lining in the streets calling for the death of not just Israel, but calling for the death of America. It sort of surprises me that I'm not hearing.
Can I tell you why?
I'm not hearing a direct sort of an emphatic answer that leans in the direction of saying absolutely not. Actually, this regime is a fucking danger to the rest of the world. In fact, it's a cancer, and threats. It is a threat to not just the Middle East, but also the world peace.
Sir, I'm gonna tell you why, Ron, and it's really simple. For me, statements like that and words like that matter, right? There's value that we assign to it, and that value that we assign to it goes into a formula that then turns into an action, right? So let's talk about threats, and let's talk about relationships and who hates who, and I'm saying who in terms of a nation, right? there's another country out there, Pakistan, who actually has the atomic capabilities to do something. And if we look at the history of Pakistan and Israel, Pakistan, you could say, and I'm using air quotes here, hates Israel just as much, right? What I don't see, and this is where I'm trying to reconcile this narrative, and maybe we can have an honest conversation about this so that I can get to the point where you guys are and I could be on that same level. But for me, pragmatically speaking, and words matter to me, what I don't see is the consistency of that message in terms of threat and fear. So we have a country, Pakistan, that literally today hasn't talked about, to the point where in the last 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, right? Let's just say the last week, you've heard statements from Pakistan. They walked back those statements. They said it again the next day, where they are willing and able to support and lean in and drop a nuke on Israel if this continues, right? But I don't see the same rhetoric from Israel against Pakistan, who has the capability and has made that claim, and since at least 1948 has been anti-Israel. So if somebody could help enlighten and share that perspective of it, for me to align the two principles.
Can someone else speak?
Yeah,
There's Pakistan is not funded
for a second. Why are people just jumping in? Just hang on for a second. Yakov, I've got you. Just let Miriam finish what she was saying. I also want to be able to point out that, you know, the Ayatollah is the person with the IRGC has been very open and verbose in terms of its desire and its intention, and its actions through proxies in the wanton destruction of Israel. Pakistan, albeit, has like an incredible arsenal of nuclear capabilities and weapons, has not done that. So they haven't openly been a threat, and they haven't threatened Israel per se. They're not peaceful, we understand that, but they're not warring in their words. Sorry, Marion, I'll pass it back to you and then I'll go to Jakob.
No, that's fair. I could see the perspective, but I also disagree. I think Pakistan has come out on several occasions and made claims against Israel. So, I mean, we can both maybe go and Google it and find those talking points and that history there, but I think that it's important to note when we're talking about it and we're framing it the way that we are, the inconsistencies and the discrepancies is where it lends itself to why now, what's at stake, are we missing the forest from the trees? And that's the position that I'm taking from it. It has nothing to do with my personal beliefs and my alliances or my allegiances to any one side. And it's just from a pragmatic perspective here, when I look at the implications of it domestically in terms of the U.S., right? I said in the beginning of this, I'm putting my U.S. hat on this. For me as a voter, as a taxpayer, I look at this and I do question the inconsistency in terms of principle when it comes to saying that this is a threat.
Bro, can I get in the queue? So, AJ down here.
AJ, absolutely. Thank you so much. AJ, I'm really glad you came up here. I was trying to get you up here a little bit earlier. I'm going to pass the mic over to Yakov, who is, I think you wanted to ask a question. Maybe
You made my point that Iran is actively funding Hezbollah, which has been firing 10,000 missiles from October 7th beyond into Israel, and prior to that, many thousands of missiles, the Houthis with their ballistic missiles, and Hamas. So it's just not a fair comparison, I think. There may be rhetoric from Pakistan, but there isn't active funding to topple the government of Israel.
You mean apples aren't the same as oranges?
Thanks, appreciate it. AJ, how are you doing? Nice to see you.
Great, thanks for having me. It's always difficult to ascertain folks' motivations and where they're coming from, and all I can do is assess the words that are being said. And I have to say, this issue hits close to home for me, and I don't want to say Mariam is pro IRGC, but Mariam, all of your comments happen to conveniently align with IRGC interests. You might say you're not anti change, but then you're very careful in your wording not to say that you would support it, and you spend all of your time on this app talking about the dangers of toppling this theocratic oppressive regime, and then when the topic of nukes come up, you draw false equivalences, and you like very cleverly kind of open the door to people being open-minded about the mullahs having a nuke. Okay, yeah, the program is so peaceful. The Iranian nuclear program is so peaceful that they buried one of their nuclear sites 100, well below a cave, and even though that they were bound by IAEA agreement in 2003, they only revealed that they had the Fordo site in 2009 after it was discovered by Western intelligence. Iran is actively funding proxies, the Houthis, the Hezbollah. They had a hand in October 7. They celebrate Death to Israel and Death to America Day, like, and the reason and even if you had some argument that they were equivalent to Pakistan, that's still, your argument falls apart, because if there's an opportunity to prevent another one of these countries from acquiring a nuke, it doesn't mean you allow it because another country already has it. That argument doesn't make any sense. So all I'm saying is it's just tough to be in this room and see. I'm glad that Mariam's take is here, that her perspective is here, but I do feel like her voice is being elevated as if she's made a mod in this room. She's getting way more speaking time in this room. And I'm sorry, you're not speaking for a lot of us, and it would be great to get alternative perspectives here. The Iranian regime has oppressed the Iranian people for 40 years. People are desperate to get out from under their thumb. Do we know what's going to come next? No, these issues are really complicated, and hopefully something worse won't come. But every one of your comments is aligning with fear-mongering around change and making people more flexible with the thought of the regime having a nuke. And it's just tough to stomach it sometimes. But I'm glad your view is here, but we need other voices on.
Well, AJ, you got the green bean, so you have a voice. Everybody on the stage has a voice. Everybody. We don't have to necessarily agree, but let's have the respectful conversation. Back to you, Rohan.
Come back. Point absolutely clear and also taken. Some of the best conversations that I've been witness to and also been part of have been ones with been differences of opinion. It's perfectly fine, but they've been done respectfully, and the points that are being made are actually really salient. Easy for people to be able to understand. I think it's a beautiful challenge, but also a beautiful thing where you can agree to disagree, instead of having a shit show and having shit flying everywhere.
Well, Ryan, let me just say this. I had this room open since 7:30 this morning, my time, and I'm glad Marion's here. She's for me, she's given a different perspective than what I've heard most of the day. So like I said, I'm no scholar on Iran or the people there, but you're right. This is healthy debates. Let's have different views in a respectful manner. But I have to be honest, Rohan, I didn't know what Miriam was going to say, so it kind of took me back because I've been hearing the opposite all morning. But I'm going to hand it back.
I want to say something real quick.
Please, Miriam, jump in then.
Look, I appreciate that my take, and I'm going to open parentheses and add this little footnote here. My take, even on domestic U.S. related things, also rubs some people wrong. So regardless of whether it's on Israel, foreign relations, geopolitics, Saudi Arabia, that's just me. And that's not me whitewashing myself or defending myself to justify my actions. I'm just saying that there's always different perspectives that people have. And so, AJ, I appreciate everything that you said. I respect you. I have an immense respect for you. You and I have been, friends on Clubhouse and exchanged ideas and thoughts on a lot of different topics. And so I appreciate where you're coming from, and I appreciate the constructive criticism in terms of the perception of what I'm saying. But because of the respect that I have for you, I was hoping that of all people, you would be one of those people who would discern what I'm saying, understand it from a different pragmatic point of view, but I also appreciate the emotions and the background and the history in it. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can get beyond the emotions and the PTSD that we both experienced, because I've experienced it as well. And that we can move beyond that and look at that at a higher level and try to understand and unpack with the words that are being used versus some ulterior motive behind it.
I appreciate that, Mariah, but I just, where I struggle sometimes is in several instances you've been asked really direct questions about some of these issues, and I don't know if you're doing it on purpose, but the way that you kind of dodge it sometimes, it does, it's sometimes concerning. Like I know these issues are really complex, but if all you're doing is saying, hey, you know, regime change is dangerous, and hey, look at this other country that has nukes. There's hypocrisy. It all starts to line up in one direction. I'm not hearing nuance from you. I'm hearing you go kind of one direction, and then when you're asked about the other direction, you kind of dodge it.
So let me make it simple.
You have to appreciate like how that sounds to me. It's like kind of hard to hear.
Let's get away from this conversation of nuclear. Okay, so we're Iranian to Iranian talking, and I'd like to hear from the other Iranians if we can. Let's just take it away from this right now, because I think what Ro is playing from my statement and how I opened when he came to me in this room, I think that's missed here. So let's get away from this talk. Let's get down to Iranians and Iranians. I don't know whose mic is open, but...
I would like to go next, if possible. I would like to go next.
Yeah, Dave, please, 1 second here, Dave. So we've heard from Dave, actually, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm gonna use these as an example. So let's say that me, if I support Iran, I support the civilians inside of Iran, right? As diverse, ethnically diverse, politically diverse, emotionally diverse, educatedly diverse, right? So let's say, and this has happened actually, AJ, let's say that I also support giving space for Kurds and Baluchis to talk about what they feel living in Iran and what they want to see for Iran, right? I guarantee you the immediate label and assumption is going to be made that I am now supporting a separatist movement, right? I'm using this as an example because at the end of the day, before we start talking about regime change, and this goes back to Rose's second question to me about what are my concerns, what do I see about the day after, about tomorrow? And I very explicitly said this, so I'd like to have an intellectually honest conversation about this. Knowing, and every Iranian in here right now knows, the complexity and the diversity of the total population of Iranians. Knowing that, I would like one person to tell me how they envision this to play out when times have changed. Social media has created platforms for people to get together more in solidarity in their silos, in their groups. So I'd like to know, in that scenario, how do we see it's going to play out? When you've got somebody like Dave here who has changed words that I said. No, not you. I asked AJ for a minute. Hold on. I would like to know this.
Your question. You keep repeating yourself.
Are you Iranian? Are you Iranian? No,
No,
you're not.
but I don't believe you have to be. I didn't know you
no,
had
no,
to be
because-
Iranian. I won't speak to you.
Randy, hang on, please.
I mean, because you're making a big speech just to make one little question.
You know, this is an important
We get it.
point.
You want to know what happens after.
Randy,
Okay.
hang on, please.
Are you familiar with
Randy,
the
hang
former
on.
Yugoslavia?
Randy, hang on. He said he can't hang on. I'm sorry, Rob. I helped him hang on. I helped him. So AJ, I would like to know, as we're having this conversation among friends who are not Iranian, and we're trying to have an honest conversation about this, I'd like to know how we're supposed to reconcile that with the diversity that we have.
Yeah, I'll be really quick, and I gotta get on an elevator here, and would love to give other people a chance to speak. Look, I don't have the answers. This is really complex. I'm actually one of the few people on this app who's capable of saying the words "I don't know." I know it's a really uncomfortable phrase for people to say. It's very complicated. Who knows what'll come after? Hopefully, it won't be something worse. All I'm saying, Marianne, is that if your only message about this opportunity to topple this sick theocratic regime is just instilling fear about removing them, and you're not saying anything else, that's concerning. I agree with you that it's scary about what will come in next. But what's different between what you and I are saying is I also talk about the great things that could come from toppling a regime like this, whereas from you, all I hear is the fear.
And I'll
I'll
just
let
quickly
some others
say,
speak.
Alright,
Yeah,
let me jump in for a second.
Can someone else talk?
Yeah, relax, I'm coming to you right now, bro. I got you. That's what I was gonna say. Listen, let's show some grace and some space for Mary, please. Already, attack the point, not the person, please. Go ahead.
I never attacked the person. I was making a point. Yugoslavia was a country. Now it's several different countries. And the same thing could happen to Iran. We've heard about a huge Kurdish ethnic minority. There are other, Iran as a state, it will turn into several states of ethnic groups. The same people who believe that Palestinians deserve their own country should also believe that different ethnic groups in Iran should have their own countries. And that is one logical outcome. Just one of many. Thank you.
Guys, can I get a mic a bit later? I've been asking for like 20 minutes.
that's
For Marion response, thank you. Oh, thank you. Probably?
You're coming through loud and clear.
So, if you let me answer to Randy a little bit and to Mariam as well. I'm not trying to diss anybody, I'm just stating facts. I'm like most of the people on this team, I live in the region. I don't live in Iran per se, but I live pretty close to it, and I have a lot of people that I've helped shelter that run away from current regime. So first part is going to be about what Mariam said, and then I'll go to Randy's point. So let's go back to the Pakistan thing. There's a lot said, but there's another thing about Pakistan that is still, it's flawed, but it still is a democracy. You saw what happened to Khan when he tried to basically take over the country. They took him away, they have a different government. And with Iran, it's like it's more hate towards Israel because it's first of all one of the main pillars of their whole affairs, like international affairs. And another thing is that it's been funding groups that don't make sense, like Hamas, because Sunni Muslims, they hate Iranians because Iranians are Shia. They just fund them out of spite. Another thing is that, Mariam, I'm not trying to attack you as a person. I'm just saying that at first I thought you were a reformist, and I would agree with that because there's a lot of delusion going on, like, oh, let's bring Shah back and all that. This will most likely never happen, but the more I listen to you, the more sounds like IRGC stuff, which I cannot support. And I think in general, less nukes is better. And Iran's proved itself to be a bad actor. Answering to Randy, nobody will ever allow Iran to break out for two reasons. First of all, Kurdistan will never be a country, and I'm not saying that I don't place hate for Kurds. I have a lot of Kurdish friends, and I love them, and I supported them. But Turkey, Iraq, Syria, all those countries will never allow Kurdistan to become a country. If it becomes a part of the country, like in Iran, then all the other Kurds will want to make it a separate state, which they will not let happen. Even though I love my Kurdish friends, I supported them, but I don't think it is possible in the current political climate. Another thing is that none of the Western countries will allow Iran to break up or to have a violent revolution because of those kilograms of enriched uranium they have, because some bad actor may just steal it and go away with it. So that is another problem why no one will ever let you have a violent revolution in Iran or let it break up in different states. I'm done.
But respectfully, Syria is not in a position to block Kurdistan, a Kurdish country. They do not have an army. They're not going to stop a Kurdish country from being created. I'm not sure that Iraq has the resources to stop a Kurdish country from being created.
Turkey.
It's not their choice.
If Iran splits into several countries, I don't see Turkey going to war and saying, no, you must stay together. I don't see how that happens.
Can I respond to something real quick here?
Yeah, of course, ma'am. Go ahead.
JB? Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to repeat this again. When Ro asked me earlier about some of my concerns, or what would I see tomorrow if there was an opportunity for a movement and a revolution, I was explaining the nuances. I mean, right now, just in the last 5 minutes, we heard mention of separatists and Kurds and all these different groups, right? We have to be able to talk about the multiple elephants in the room, if we want to have a conversation about this. So if I don't take a position on anything and I speak more analytically or, in different ways, I think really aggravates TC and so many others, it's because it's so complex. You can't just fit it into a singular answer. And we just saw an example of that. When I was responding to Ron earlier and I was explaining the complexity of it and the different ideological and philosophical views of the different siloed groups of Iranians inside and out, when I got to the point of reformists, I said there's reformists politically and then there's reformists ideologically, philosophically. And I said that, literally at that point, I said that's where I fall. So I can't remember who it was. I think it was Gibby who said this. That's where I fall. And I fall that way because I lived in the United States my entire life and we are a reformist system, philosophically. We reform and our bills, our policies, our procedures, our narratives, from everything, we build 250 years of America based off of reform. And so that's the guiding philosophy that I personally hold. I don't fit into any boxes, so you can't fit me into any box when it comes to Iran politically. It's very hard to do, and I think that's part of the problem is because people want me to be assigned to one box, and I'm not. So I just wanted to clear that up for you. Gibby, to...
I'm not trying to take up. I'm sorry, AJ, I'll just respond in 10 seconds. I'm not trying to take you in any way. I just said that a lot of points maybe in that direction. And I personally, I don't support reformists as an ideology. I think personally, in a perfect world, a whole regime change would be good in Iran, but I think that is the most likely direction they're heading if anything changes. I'm sorry if I offended you.
Just real quick though, Mariam, I respect your seeking out of nuance on these topics. I don't think enough people do that. And you're right, these things are really complicated. But there are some questions where we do have to be clear-minded about, and it is a yes or no answer. Nuclear acquirement is one of those questions. When someone asks you point blank, should the IRGC acquire a nuke? And you start talking about, well, it's complicated because, Pakistan has a nuke and where is Israel's smoke for Pakistan, et cetera, what are you saying? It's one or the other. You can't have half a nuke. So either you are comfortable with the idea of a regime like the IRGC acquiring a nuke, or you are not. There is no spectrum there. So I think that's where I struggle with, I feel like sometimes you are seeking out important nuance, but other times I feel like there's a little bit of kicking up dust in the air to overcomplicate a question that we should be more clear-minded about.
Let me chime in here.
But you missed everything I said there.
No, Mariam, if I could.
Sounded like you was listening.
Paul, I was the one that.
With all due respect, Paul, I'm gonna defer to TC. I'm gonna get Mariam to be able to respond to that direct question.
Actually, I have a suspicion that TC is going to say what I want to say.
Well, I just wanted to chime in. I don't think this is fair to Mariam. I know she has come on the stage and has been the focal point of conversation. I asked the question purely provocatively because I thought it would evoke this type of response in terms of conversation. With that being said, I have to be honest, I come from a Western perspective. You guys are coming from a Middle Eastern perspective, and I respect that. With that being said, though, Mariam, I think in terms of just like the intelligence you bring to the conversation, the detail, the respect for the complexity of the conversation, I think it demands a firm, integral response to what your position is when it comes to this current regime, IRGC. And I understand that you are trying to kind of, weigh the equities here. And that's fair. And I think coming from, learning a little bit about your history, I think that's what informs your commentary, and I can respect that as well. But I think, again, the conversation demands somebody that has such a deep, rich understanding of the histories and the context in which this conversation is having. It demands a response. And so I just would love to give you an opportunity, if you can, even if you decide to color it with more context, nuance, and complexity, that's fine. But from your opinion, when you wake up in the morning, you face this issue, is the world better off with or without a nuclear-armed Iran under this current regime?
Yeah, okay. And we're
Sorry,
one idiot. That's all right. We found the schmuck. Okay, he's gone. Marion, look, I think it's fair. It is a fair question. I was asking a pretty direct question. It wasn't about trying to pin you into a box in the slightest. It was about, look, for me, it's about trying to understand. Honestly, it's about values.
So,
I'd like to be able to understand your values.
So when you asked me as an Israeli, if I were an Israeli, do I understand that? How did I answer that, Ro?
You said that you'd understand the concern.
Yes, and I would agree. And no, I'm going to get there.
It's a different question.
I'm going to get there.
I think it was my question was the one that was
yes,
first posed.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there so that everybody can record this and timestamp it and make sure that they listen to it very carefully. So when Rowan asked me that question, I said, I understand as an Israeli, and I would agree as an Israeli, if I was an Israeli, that I would say, yes, get that shit out of there, right? When TC asked me my position on it, I said, I had to explain some background, and I answered you, TC, didn't I say I can't just answer it really short, I have to give you some background because there is some dimension to it. But where I landed on that was, I said, given the behavior and the actions, since Iran, even amidst the JCPOA and the U.S. backing out, I said, even though the U.S. backed out of it, there were other nations that were involved in it that Iran had an agreement with. And Iran let it get out of hand, whether intentionally or not, and I think it was intentional. I'm going to say that right now, that they intentionally increased their enrichment production. And I said that moment, yes, this is a problem, and it is a concern, and I understand it as a concern. Enrichment leads to nuclear bomb, right? And so if I'm framing it that way, I would think intellectually that the way that it is received by others would be that statement. But I thought it was important for the conversation to add that dimension to it because we have to understand the why. We have to be able to justify it with data points. We have to be able to explain the behavior of it and why. And as Iranians, sometimes we get caught up in the emotions of it. And we're just like, we hate the regime, okay, it's gotta go, and we know everything about the regime is shitty, yes, I get it, I'm right there with you guys. I mean, I think Ro explained who I am and who my grandfather is. Like, my grandfather was put in prison, I have cousins that were executed, I had a cousin who had escaped, I've had another cousin that was in prison for 3 years for speaking out against the regime. So I'm not saying this because I'm trying to sugarcoat what I'm saying, hang on, AJ, I'm trying to say that when I answer you guys, if I add a little bit more context or depth to it, if you listen carefully, you will still hear my response to you.
I'm sorry, Miriam. Saying it's a concern is not a direct answer to the question. I welcome your injecting of nuance in the conversation. But again, if you actually listen carefully to what you just said, you did not answer the question directly. And that's fine. You don't have to answer the question. I don't like pretending that you're answering and then not answering it. Saying you understand and empathize with the concern and it's a problem, that's not an answering of the question of whether or not you believe the IRGC and these mullahs should or should not be armed with a nuclear weapon. Forget about whether pretending to be an Israeli and whether you understand the concerns from a global perspective, from an objective perspective. Do you believe the IRGC should be armed with a nuke? And I'm
actually not. I'm asking it rhetorically now because the last 3 times you were asked it directly, you again just evade it and you say it's a concern. That's not an answer. I'm sorry.
So rhetorically, any nation that doesn't follow the rules of engagement should not have a nuclear weapon. And the reason why I brought up Pakistan was because if we're framing it on principle of any nation who doesn't follow the rules of being able to have one or create one, when they have an enrichment program or nuclear reactors or whatever, I'm going to say it again, AJ. Rhetorically, I don't think that any nation should have that capability. So if we're saying that, if I'm saying that, that means that if Iran checks off the boxes and is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then Iran also should not have a nuclear weapon. Take it how you want, AJ. I am done engaging in this. If you guys don't want to listen carefully, but I'm saying that on principle, I am operating on principle as my North Star, because right now in this very emotional time, when a lot of people are upset about a lot of things, there's only one thing that can guide us and ground us to the ground, and that's principle. So on principle, no, I do not think that any nation should have that, including Iran. And I hope that finally answers your question.
I'm going to jump in here. David, hold on a second, because I've been listening for like the last hour and a half, whatever. And I'm just going to speak my opinion. No smoke with anybody. I respect most of the people on the stage. But we have a regime, right, that fully funds Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, as a Zionist, an American Jew, right? They got to be taken out just for that, because they're the shit stirrers in that region. That's my opinion. Now, as far as them having the nukes, when they come out and say the day we get the bomb is the day we use the bomb, right? I believe them because of the support they have for these terrorist organizations. I believe that they want to destroy Israel, right? But let me say this. And I was thinking about this while you guys were having this conversation. And it's not the same, but it kind of ties together in my crazy Brooklyn mind. When Abraham Lincoln engaged in the Civil War, his goal wasn't to free the slaves. His goal was to keep the Union together. If the Persian people could somehow gain their freedom through this, I say God bless them. Let them live free. But give them, and whatever may come, but you know what? We know what we're dealing with right now. And what we see, the oppression, the suppression, the killing of their own people. So people can say what they want. They can ride the fence. They're smarter than everybody else. There needs to be a regime change just for peace in the world, because they support terrorist organizations.
Okay, so I've stayed up well past my bedtime, but it's been really worthwhile. I'm going to be heading off, but I want to say, first of all, thanks JB for allowing us to be able to entertain the idea of being able to cut with the program that you were having to this. It wasn't something that was pre-organised. It was really something on the fly. I just appreciate that. A big thanks to Miriam. Please, Miriam, feel free to be able to stay around. I just want to thank you personally for. I guess, look, I mean, your position is something that is really interesting. I don't fully understand it. I'm not going to say that I disagree with it entirely, but it's something I feel like I need to be able to have, and I'd love the opportunity to be able to have further discussion with you about at some point in time. Now, I guess, and say, look, you've been through so much. You've shared with me privately what's occurred. I'm really happy for you, finally coming out and sharing what your experience has been and what your history is and your family and so forth. It must be it must be a great relief for you in some way, shape, or form, in many ways, in fact. So, look, with that, I just want to say good night. Thanks so much for entertaining the conversation. I look forward to doing it again. Always a pleasure.
Hold on, guys. Listen, when Rohan leaves the stream by like maybe another 10 minutes, let's get civil to each other. You didn't hear me speaking? I'm sorry, you didn't hear my voice? I'm sorry. You want me to get a little louder?
Sorry he didn't talk.
Okay. Hold on a second. Can I run my room? Thank you. We're going to go Navin, and then I want to go, Michaela left. Michaela, you're there. We'll go Navin, then Michaela. Go ahead.
I'm here. I'm an Indian. A lot of problems can be solved because a lot of people can make fun of Indians easily, and I don't take it to heart. Okay, do not redeem all the stuff. But anyway, basically, I kind of understand where both sides are coming from. Mostly because yeah, when I follow American politics, I kind of feel like no one wants boots on the ground for this kind of war. Okay, Israel war. I think Trump is doing kind of really good by trying to raise support Israeli people by trying to dismantle the nukes or whatever. But when the Israeli people said they want to kill the leader of Iran, Trump initially said no, don't kill him, because I think he knew like if that happened, if a sudden regime change happened, there was going to be like a power vacuum or something like that, or because there might like whatever happened in the previous Middle Eastern wars, all the terrorist groups or whatever, they could have been born anew or something like that. I mean, that's why like regime change is kind of being, hesitated upon. And I think Miriam is kind of leaning on towards whatever a JB and other people. I think AI was it? He wasn't here. He isn't here right now. He's kind of on that point. I mean, Mariam is on that point, but she can't say certain things or whatever. So she can't openly state it. This is what I feel. So basically, I think that quick regime change will lead to a lot of unforeseen consequences. So I think it'd be best, to like dismantle the nukes, and then let's see how the regime change goes or whatever, how the people feel about it or whatever. That's my opinion.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Michaela, you there, Michaela?
Yeah, I just have a minute. I have an appointment coming up. I just wanted, I've been in and out, but I'd like to know if, Marianne, I would think that maybe the Crown Prince is talking to the Kurds, I hope. I would think that maybe he would be forming a provisional government that would include them and maybe solve part of that problem. Mariam?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, I'm going to share something I've shared in smaller circles here amongst all of you. Back when the Masa Amini movement started, the Women Life Freedom movement and all of that started, there was a coalition that was created, and it included the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, and included the leader of a Kurdish group that everybody calls separatist group. It included Shirin Ebadi, who's a human rights lawyer. It included, Nazanin Bonyadi, and a number of other people. Okay, so it included a nice knights table, if you will, of different people that represent a different faction of people, right? That was the first time in modern history, at least in the last 46 years, I would even venture to say before that even, because it was in your face, out in the public. They had a website, they had coalition meetings, they had press conferences, they had all of this stuff going on, right? And it was the first time that the diaspora, and even on the inside, you saw the movement on the inside, you saw that happen. But then because certain people that had allegiances to one party put pressure on certain people in that coalition, it broke apart, Michaela. So when that happened, a lot of people who are vocal, adamantly vocal, and despise the regime and don't have the same fears I have to speak so loudly about it, those people fell off. They were upset. They thought to themselves, hold on a second here, this really isn't going to happen. This is a joke. They've made a mockery of it, right? So the faith and the trust in that had disappeared. So your question is a really good question. But unfortunately, the trust is not there anymore because you have a lot of people that are very anti-separatist, anti-Kurd separatists. So when they hear a narrative or a faction of the population and you hear a leader talking to somebody like that, you get that. Reza Pahlavi also said in the very beginning, after the dismantling of the coalition, immediately after that, he said, I would even sit at the table with Mariam Rajavi, who's the presumed leader and the self-elected president of the MEK. He got a lot of backlash for that. Lost a lot of supporters. In fact, one of them is a really, really well-known Iranian woman here in these spaces. She said after that that day, I couldn't have anything to do with him. After I saw him a part of that coalition, I couldn't have anything to do with him. This is the complexity that I was talking about when I said I have a fear that right now we're not unified enough for it to make the difference that we are expecting to see. It has nothing to do with my desire to have the regime stay or go.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you. Paul, how you doing, Paul?
Hey, JB. Thanks for letting me on stage. Yeah, as an American, I'm just kind of taking a wide view on this from the understanding that the last time we went into a country in the Middle East with this kind of complexity, we spent almost 20 years there, and Iraq is still kind of a gigantic mess of conflicting ideological and religious and ethnic groups that are still fighting for dominance. So I really don't want us involved in Iran in any way, shape, or form. The population is almost 3 times the size of Iraq. It would be trillions of dollars if we went in there. Decapitating the Iranian regime is probably a no-go because they have so many bunkers. They have backups. They have continuity of government plans the same way that the U.S. and most Western governments do. So the fact is, removing them is, unless you're willing to put the U.S. military and the Israeli Defense Forces on the ground, it's probably going to be a no-go. So, the fact is, negotiations are probably the only way you're going to get out of this. And the idea
Hey, Paul, let me ask you a question. Respectfully. Did you see when the IDF sent those beepers out? How they were able to eliminate a bunch of people with just beepers? Did you see how? Wait, let me finish. Did you see how they saved my French soulmate from this app? When they went in there and they rescued him and 3 other hostages? I'm sure if they wanted to make the head of the regime over there, it wouldn't take much.
So I think they probably could, but there are layers of government they've built in there. They've been under siege for almost 50 years. These aren't stupid people. This isn't a terrorist cell like Hezbollah. This is an actual functional centralized government with tax revenue and with foreign relations. I think there's a very real difference between regime change and removing Hezbollah's leadership and going after a centralized nation state. That this is a very different thing. It was even different in Iraq. Iraq had spent 15 years under severe economic limitations. There were trade barriers. They couldn't trade oil abroad, and they'd been slowly sort of whittled away. Iran is in a very different situation. They know the terrain. They know the people. This is going to be a very, very difficult and hard campaign. If the U.S. really wants to go in and start bombing them, I think it's going to be a very different campaign than what we've been used to for the last 20 or 30 years, which is these blitzkrieg strikes. You drop bombs and you put special forces on the ground, and congratulations, we've now removed the regime. This is a very different situation. So I think the other thing that we need to keep in mind here is that I understand if I was an Israeli, I would not want them to have a bomb, but the Israelis do have a fully functioning nuclear arsenal of their own of at least 100, if not 200 nuclear weapons. We know they've open air tested in the late 70s with the South Africans down in the South Atlantic Ocean. They do have a functioning nuclear arsenal that, I think somebody brought up to Miriam, like, why don't they just go into Pakistan? If the Pakistanis ever launched a weapon at the Israelis, it wouldn't just be the Israelis launching at them. The Indians have a fully functioning arsenal of a couple of hundred warheads themselves. Pakistan would be a pile of ash at the end of that. Like, there would be no sort of wavering. Everybody would launch at them, and that would be the end of it. The Iranians
Hold on a second. How many conflicts has Israel engaged in since October 7th?
Several.
And I'm not talking about just Gaza. I'm talking about other areas, right? How many nukes have they fired?
They haven't had to, but if the Pakistanis launched a warhead at them, that would be the equivalent of a mutually assured destruction scenario where the Israelis would have no choice other than to use a nuclear weapon in response. And the Israelis do have a functional arsenal, a very large one. Everybody knows about it. It's the worst kept secret in foreign relations.
Paul's right, but he's rude.
How am I rude exactly?
How was he rude? I thought he was very respectful. All right, so the other mods, TC, Rohan, Hope, Miriam. I'm out of here. You guys want to keep it open, you're more than welcome to. Just let me know. If not, we'll close it down. Miriam, TC.
I have to go, but thank you. TC, I sent you a message too.
you. JB, I'm on my way out.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna close. You guys been a great room, great conversation. Probably open another one tonight. Everybody be well, be safe, and be nice.
He wasn't really telling everybody to move back to Africa, but he was trying to let everybody know that they have African roots. And
I want to, before we go to Ron, because Ron is here, I want you to consider this, because in your last submission, you were talking about the IEA. Eagle Hawk says IEA chief cleans up Israel using their report, states they have no weapon program as of June 20th, 2025. IAE chief says agency's report on Iran's secret nuclear activity wasn't the cause of Israeli military offensive, or offense. And he puts that link in the chat. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at that, but the IAEA is saying, listen, don't make them the reason why we go to war, because they have not said that they are at the 60%. Go ahead.
Can I also answer a statement that Fires made? Because I just want to clarify.
No. I got to be impeccable about my word. I said I was going to Ron. That's what I'm doing. You can get in after Ron. Since nobody else. Cool beans. And y'all gonna have to run yourselves in a minute, because I gotta do some things. I gotta also speak to my girl Mel. Hey Mel! Yo was showing out last night.
Hey.
Happy Friday,
Happy Saturday.
All right, go ahead, Ron. One mic.
So I'm looking at a copy of the CIA report that FIS believes that he quoted about Israel having stealing fissionable material or uranium in 1965, and it says there's some credible evidence that it was released. Now I don't know if how useful this report is from the CIA.gov, but that's what it says. And in any event, basically that's it. I mean, nobody knows that Israel has any weapons. Nobody's ever seen them, and most of it's just sort of conspiracy theories. Now it's possible that Israel may have them. I don't know, but as far as any other evidence that I've looked up on the internet, nobody says that it has it. I don't think that anybody has a quote unquote God-given right to just build nuclear weapons. One of the reasons why we have such restrictions on certain weapons is because they are so dangerous that they can cause cataclysmic issues in society, right? There's one nuclear bomb in the middle of anywhere and cause a drift of humans to move from one place to another, and also cause damage to the atmosphere as we know it. Unfortunately, it seems that aspect, based off of what I know who live in Iran and who live in Iran that I've spoken to, the current regime is not a type of regime that you want to trust. I understand that some of us have issues with America and what America has done throughout history, but I do think that there are some bad people that you can trust to some extent, and there's some bad people that you don't fully understand. And I think that people in the West really don't understand what it is to live in certain environments, especially those that are controlled by a particular type of religious ideology. And unfortunately, that is the current situation of the Iranian regime. And again, when we say the regime, we mean the Ayatollah, and not necessarily the people or the government, but the supreme leader of religious ideology.
Can I jump in now? I mean, I just wanted to mention, well done, Ron, for saying that. But also, I just want to say, Fires mentioned something earlier. He said that Israel has attacked 6 countries in however many years, and Iran has not attacked one. Well, I'll tell you where you're completely wrong, Fires, is that the reason why these countries have been attacked is because Iran has been funding and projecting its proxies and promoting its proxies through these countries. If you take a look at all the countries that have been attacked by Israel, it is effectively those terrorist organizations that have been set up and funded by Iran. Okay, there's the only reason why Israel has had to constantly defend itself. The only reason why Israel has had to do that is because of Iran. All right? So when you talk about the idea that Iran has never attacked another country, Iran has done it in such a way that it's hidden its vicious intent from the rest of the world in the way in which it's doing exactly the same thing with its nuclear program. And for you to sit there and say, so what if it's making 60% of enrichment uranium? Well, the 60% of enrichment uranium is specifically for it to be handed over to its proxies, so its proxies can then use it to attack the rest of the world. And believe you me, it's not only Israel they want, it's the West. And they've made it very clear. And then to sit there and say that they don't want to attack anybody, they don't have any intention to attack anybody, when the Ayatollah himself turns around and says, death to America, death to Israel.
Terminate other people's life and other people's project. Who are you to determine that? That's the point. Who are you?
I'll tell you who I am. I am the person who's going to protect my next of kin from somebody who says they want to take my life. That's who I am. Who are you to tell me that you want to take my life?
With the mods, I would like to respond to Ron and Pikachu. Okay, I think it's okay to respond. Ron, you mentioned about you do not know whether Israel has nuclear weapons or not. See, nobody knows, but everybody thinks, most of the analysts and experts think Israel has nuclear weapons. That's why everybody has been asking that Israel should sign the NPT and allow IAEA inspectors to inspect its sites so that it can be clear whether it has nuclear weapons or not. And here's the point. If Israel doesn't have nuclear weapons, why doesn't it allow the IAEA to do the inspections? It has nothing to fear if it doesn't have the nuclear weapons. Then as far as Pikachu, your point is concerned, here's my answer. Okay, yes, Iran has been empowering Hezbollah, Hamas, and other organizations, just as Israel has been empowering Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria. And I think Iran did the right thing by empowering Hezbollah and Hamas because they are resistance forces. They may be terrorist organizations for you, but for me, they were fighting an occupation. Okay, and both of them, incidentally, were born in the 1980s, Hezbollah and Hamas, whereas Israel was born in 1948. Okay, so that shows that they were a product of something. What was that something? That something was oppression and occupation by Israel. Otherwise, Hezbollah and Hamas would not have been born. Okay, and I see nothing wrong in Israel, in Iran, supporting these organizations and helping them. And I would like Iran to continue to do so, just like America does it to Israel. So why should I have a problem with that? And I feel threatened. You kept saying
supporting somebody.
No, Pikachu, I didn't complete. Pikachu, I didn't complete. Please. I'm coming to that. Okay? They have, everybody feels threatened by what Israel will do next. Okay? You're talking about, they shouted death to America, Ayatollah shouted, somebody said death to Israel. Okay. There are 24 Israeli ministers right now who are saying that every Palestinian should be annihilated. Every Palestinian, including Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, Smotrich. No, what is false? People you can do your hasbara as much as
Please
possible.
don't interrupt again. Go ahead, finish up. You got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, there is Google, there is AI, there is ChatGPT. People can check what the Israeli leaders have been saying. So according to your logic, Pikachu, Palestinians, because they are being threatened with death, they have a right to annihilate Israel then. That's what you are saying.
Well, you heard it all here, folks. You heard Fires saying, I'm in full support of Iran continuing with its death threat to America and Israel. Congratulations, Fires.
Let me respond. I didn't say that. I said I support Iran supporting Hamas and Hezbollah.
No, you don't even have to correct yourself. We know what you said. Like when people say
environment where
Oh, sure,
everybody
Sydney.
else is
First
happy.
of all, don't come off your mic and tell me. Don't
Alright,
What's going
on?
We
What's
heard
going on?
Sydney.
Alright, listen. Y'all gotta chill back. Alright, cool. Like, listen, today is the day of Sabbath. Alright, for those that practice. If you don't, then that's fine, but still respect others. All this hostility is giving me anxiety, and I don't need anxiety because then that means I can't rest in my femininity, right? So you guys want me to talk soft to you, you want me to be nice and kind, I need you guys to do the same to each other, all right? When you guys come off the mic and you start interrupting, that's... You're not holding the water? Okay. Who's that? So you can have a seat. Okay, you need to have a seat in the audience too. Thank you. Go ahead, Lord Ashley. I'm not going to take disrespect because I don't disrespect people. But if you disrespect me, I definitely will return in kind. Thank you. The conversation was going good. Guys, just let one another talk one at a time. And Muzz, if you're there, I need your help. I need to get ready for something. Hey, Dr. Goddess, how are you? Happy Saturday. Ash, I see you flashing your mic. But there was a conversation. Okay, Sydney, I see you flashing your mic. Sweet was actually the first person that asked could he speak. So we're going to go to Sweet, Ash, Sydney. But Sydney, you just got on stage and you started to pick a fight. I don't know what's going on. Be nice. You got a sunshine, smiley face on there. Keep it that way. All right, Sweet. On mic on you.
Absolutely. For those of us, again, I know Robert took an issue with me saying the fact that inside America right now, wherever you live, California, LA, New York, whatever it is, you're not involved. We're not, actively like how our people over here dying yet. So the point is being drawn into this war as Americans. American people, American soldiers actually now, and so many generations now have understood America's not trying to get engaged actively, personally in any foreign wars. Okay, so we can bring peace, that's one thing. But I wanted to say that because to say that when any people that recognize who is fueling who, and we're watching these individuals that can't talk. A lot of times they come in the clubhouse, it gets so charged because they're in the trenches and their rational abilities aren't present because they're in the trenches. And when you're in the trenches, you're